G'day, everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, as always, joined by my co-host, Iowa Joe. Today, welcoming on the host of Packers Total Access, Clayton Bailey. Clayton, it's so good to finally talk to you. This is one of those kind of Twitter profiles and obviously people that I've really been keen to meet. I always see you around, I always love your posts and obviously the content that you create in your show. It's great to finally meet you. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing great, man. I really appreciate the invite, man. Just hanging out here talking to Joe, pre-show, and it's always good to meet other Packer fans, especially when it's all the way across the world. And for those of you who can probably tell with the accent, me and Nick are related, right? You can already tell.
Well, like we were talking before show, it just happened to be random that some dick came after Clayton and I just, popped out there, say, hey, leave that guy out of it. Just come talk Packers
It's
with us. And
hilarious. We got to give that backstory. We've got to. So we had a guy on Twitter who was just disagreeing with me on something. And just like everyone does on Twitter, if you disagree, then you've just got to be extremely rude and insult them. And, that's how you handle it. So all I simply said was, hey, man, since you know so much, why don't we hop on a live call right now on video and let's break down some X's and O's. And I don't know. I'm sure his thumb just slipped, but he blocked me. Then all of a sudden, I get this message from Joe. Said, "Hey, man, instead of arguing with him, why don't you come on the show?" I was like, "Hey, you know what? That sounds good. Let's do that. Let's roll." So here we are.
Hey, man, it's a lot. That was a lot simpler than what I had to do with Wes Hotchkiss. I pretty much had to stalk him around Lambeau before I could get him to come on. So
Love it.
No, I didn't, Wes. I'm just giving you shit. I mean, it was a random meeting that happened that I just happened to talk to him. But yeah, it's great. I've done that with several people, and just the community the Packers have on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now, and you can argue with somebody one day and the next day you can be best friends because you're agreeing against something somebody else said. It's just, or we can all agree that Vikings fans and Bears fans suck. So
Right.
it just
yeah, it gets wild out there in what I call the Twitter streets. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, guys, we're finally out of the dark part of the off season. We actually have things to talk about. Training camp is here. I mean, we've had 3 practices already. No pads just yet. I think the next practice is going to have pads on, or maybe exciting next month the pads will be on. But yeah, I mean, from the small little snippets and obviously Brandon from the Underage Packers has been leaking heaps of videos and getting in trouble for it. But I mean, yeah, what are you guys thinking? What are you hearing? What are you feeling about everything coming out of training camp?
Well, I want to first put out there that maybe we need to start a GoFundMe for Big B's bail, because pretty soon they're going to get him in Packer jail and, tell him to put the lotion on the skin or he's going to get the hose again, that kind of shit. But, that's been great the whole time. And, he's been taking it with stride too, because everybody's been coming at him from every other way, just giving him shit about that. So that's pretty good. But I am so psyched. I actually have the itch where it's like I miss being up at training camp, that maybe I shouldn't have went to OTAs. I should have just went up to training camp. But it's exciting. I know Love is going to get the most attention out of everything just because of what's going on. My mom made the comment the other day, and I was like, well, I kind of had to think about it, but she was like, well, Love's actually riding the bike. When was the last time Rodgers did? And it's like, well, Love is still on a rookie contract and he's obligated to ride the bikes. And Rodgers hasn't been on a rookie contract in like 20 years, but I still get the sentiment. They could have said, well, you're a starter now. You don't have to go out and do it, but he's still going out and riding the bikes every day. And so I really, I know everybody that I was following said that today was like his best day of practice. And, again, it's still early. They're still in shorts. I think they start pads Monday. I think it's something in the CBA that like the first 4 practices have to be non-pads and then they can go pads after that. But I love seeing the updates. Obviously Big B's bootlegged videos and the pictures and that I'm seeing everywhere have been great, but I'm ready for it. Packers football is ready. It is kicking off.
Yeah, absolutely. Big B's bootleg video. It sounds like something somebody's selling behind a gas station, doesn't it? I love it. I love it. We're definitely a part of the right fan base, man. Now, what you talked about with Packers Twitter, man, we are so blessed. I mean, we've got so many different personalities, so much content. Joe was telling me offline, Nick, that you listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm in the same boat, man. I can't get enough of it, and I'm starting to, as I get older, I'm starting to really key in on the X's and O's a little bit more. So I'm starting to favor, specific ones, but it's just so awesome that no matter what kind of fan you are, as far as being a Packers fan, if it's just a casual, then there's plenty of guys that are covering the team that are very entertaining, right? And then you've got others that if you're an X's and O's nuts like me, a nerd, then you've got plenty that you can key in on there. You've got your highlight guys like Baz, who does an excellent job. It's really, really cool. But as far as training camp, the big thing that stood out to me today, like you said, it's the final practice before the pads come on, and that's when we're really going to separate the men from the boys, right? Today, we got to see Lucas Van Ness running with the ones, which is really exciting. I don't know if you guys seen Andy Herman's tweet. I'm sure you did, but he said that he threw Josiah DeGuara 4 yards into the backfield, like into love. I immediately went back to the Reggie White highlight where he threw the Vikings tackle into, I think it was Dante Culpepper or Randall Cunningham, whoever it was.
Warren Moon.
Was it Warren Moon?
Yeah, number one. He was number one.
Isn't it amazing how many quarterbacks these other NFC North teams have had? And we've just had two, right? It seems like. But so it was cool to see Van Ness kind of stepping up and getting into that rotation. I think he's going to see a lot of playing time, which, like Baz pointed out on our podcast the other night, they have a heavy rotation at the edge anyway. I think it was 35% of the snaps last year was actually backup edge defenders. So whether he's technically the starter or not, he's going to see a lot of snaps. That's exciting. And like you said, Jordan Love had his best practice so far this camp, which is really cool. I think they said unofficially he went 16 of 21, led a 2-minute drill down to the 1 yard line where Musgrave got stopped. But still, it's cool to see those guys kind of coming up together, man. And I don't know if you guys heard his little stint on NFL Network, but Jordan Love got interviewed by Stacey Dells, and man, what a class act, dude! I'm excited for him to be the quarterback. And this is me. I was one of the Aaron Rodgers defenders. I love Aaron Rodgers. Appreciate everything he did. But as we turn the page, I don't think we could ask for anyone better as far as from just a respect level. Someone you could tell he respects the game. He loves his teammates. Jordan Love seems like a class act. He really does.
Well, and I completely agree with that. I was one of the first ones when the draft pick was made. I was like, "What the hell is this?" I understand wanting to
it was
get
like
your
opening
future.
socks on Christmas morning. What it was like?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, well, I know we need it, but do we really have to have it? But yeah, he's been really solid. He could have came in the Aaron Rodgers route and had the chip on his shoulder and everything like that, but he's really went the other way. He's been appreciative of everything. I'm glad to see that Aaron Rodgers did reach out to him and say, hey, good luck, out there. And, they still communicate back and forth. I don't know how much, but, it's still great to see that they have some kind of relationship there where, when Rodgers was doing that, there wasn't much there between him and Brett. Brett was pretty much, I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
But I did see the Van Ness thing, and I love it. It's really going to be what's really going to be the most interesting thing is to see is when Rashawn Gary comes back, because he's not going to come back 100%. Just the ACL injury, he's still going to have to be on a pitch count. Well, if Van Ness is, tearing it up, most college players, when they come in the NFL, always have a drop off towards the end of the season because there's the difference in the NFL and the college schedule. So if he starts going towards drop off, you're bringing Rashawn Gary right back in.
It's a great point.
It's going to make a scary defense. Now, I'm not going to say, as much as I'm a Van Ness homer and a Hawkeye homer and all this stuff, I know there's, expectations have to be tempered. Yeah. He's not going to come out and be, a 50 sack guy in 4 games. It's just not possible.
This isn't Madden, right?
Right. But could he come out and have an impact like Clay Matthews did? Well, yeah for sure. we're already seeing him practices, and I just kind of caught bits of it, but in one of the interviews he did after practice, he goes, "The best is yet to come. I'm easing up a little bit on this. Wait until pads come out." So
Yeah.
it's great. And another thing that's been refreshing with the training camp, with just what I've seen from the last 2 days, Jordan Love is integrating everybody.
Yeah.
We were so used to Brett Favre zeroing in on, one receiver. We were so used to Rodgers, oh, well, I'm going to stick with my veterans and the rookies
Yes.
have to learn as they go. So far, I've been hearing love to Reed constantly,
Yeah.
or love to Musgrove, or, it just, or Musgrave. I keep mixing that shit up. I'll learn it eventually.
Somebody called him muskrat earlier on a podcast. I was like, muskrat? What are we doing? So it's totally cool.
Okay, so that brings to mind a story for me, and this comes up with another Hawkeye. But when Brian Bulaga was drafted, I was up at training camp, and I was standing by the gates, and I was doing my autograph thing and all that stuff. And Brian Bulaga comes up on the bike, and here are these kids just yelling at him, "Hey, Beluga! Hey, Beluga! Beluga!" It's like, oh, he's just looking like, what? And then a couple of, I can't remember who the players were, but they came up and, yeah, Beluga, go sign for him, Beluga.
Welcome to the league.
But anyway, it's back to my point. It's just great to see that Love is going everywhere. It's not
Right.
just he's going to mess with Watson and Dubs and Torre, which Torre sounds like he's having a good camp so far too, but he's going everywhere. Even the new guy that they just drafted, and we're going to touch on this here in a couple minutes, or not drafted, that they just brought in as a UDFA, that Crest, had a wonderful one-handed catch today. And that just shows that, everybody's getting their hands on stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
No, yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I guess like you're saying, it's like the kind of the full shift in like the youth and the kind of the leadership of this team. I mean, I'm really happy about seeing Jair kind of still maintaining that role and yeah, like really stepping up to being more of a leader on the team. Yeah, it's guys like him that are going to be running this defense, going to be motivating the other players to push. And like you guys were saying, having Van Ness in there, like Edge is almost kind of like running back now, where like you're never gonna really have like a true like bell cow who's taking like all of the snaps. On a good defense, you look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl the past 5-6 years, they all run through heavy D-line rotation. And like I think that's why I think a lot of us were really happy when Van Ness was drafted, not necessarily just as a replacement for Preston, but just to make the team better overall and just to make everyone's life easier. Yeah, I'm really happy about kind of the state of everything on the team except for like safety. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. But I think all we can do at this moment is just like look forward to what's going to happen. It's kind of just in that waiting mode.
Well, and you mentioned safety. It sounds like the safeties are even really stepping in there. They're mixing them all up, and they're saying that Tavares Moore has been looking great. And it makes you wonder if the reason why he kind of went downhill is because of the Achilles injury. And now that he's fully healthy, he was a 3rd-round pick. Right. And, I know the Packers haven't had great success with 3rd-round picks, but that doesn't mean everybody else hasn't had success with 3rd-round picks. So, and that Jonathan Owens had day one, played the run very well. There was a couple of times he was getting in the backfield on run defense. So, even though we don't have like big names, we could, and as much as we've been kind of down on the safety position all off season, it might not be as weak as we thought it was.
No, and that's one thing that that Goody does well, right? He gets those cheap free agents, and someone always pops. Rasul popped, Devondre Campbell popped. You kind of look at the draft, and it didn't fall the way they wanted it to in the safety room. So what did they do? They took Anthony Johnson Jr. late, but then before that in free agency, they said, okay, I'm sure that they had a fairly high draft grade on both Jonathan Owens and and Tarvarius Moore, which is why they brought him in. Of course, you got Rudy Ford returning. The one thing I disagree with is Darnell Savage on that 5th-year option. I wish they would have let him test the market. Probably could have got him a little cheaper. But it's, then again, with Amos leaving, like if they didn't land Savage, they're looking at that safety room going, oh man, we're going to have to bring out the custodians here soon or something. Right. So, it's easy to sit on our couch, right. And just say, well, here's what I would have done. You get a lot on the line. So, I'm hoping Savage pops this year. I think he's a great guy. I think he's got a great attitude. It's just, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he's played well. He's definitely underperformed.
Right. And, it's kind of strange to see with him go from his rookie year and the second year where he looked solid to being almost nothing. So, yeah, this is his make or break year, so we'll see what happens.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing I just want to talk about is just kind of noting which players are playing with the ones and which players kind of like coming in and out. Like obviously Musgrave is basically tight end 1. He's been playing with the ones every single day. A lot of those, and obviously Kraft as well is basically going to be tight end 2. It seems like they're kind of moving DeGuara to his actual position, the H-back role, more of the hybrid position. He's not, blocking in line or whatever. Which it's nice to see because that's not what he's supposed to be doing. It was never what he was supposed to be doing when he was drafted for this team. And obviously, the fact that they're pushing for Musgrave and Kraft to be getting starting reps is really, really promising. And it's all they can do for these guys. But something I found kind of interesting as well on the defensive side is that when they go to nickel or if they change their front, the player to come out is Wyatt, not Slayton. They're really pushing to get Clark and Slayton together in the middle of that line, which I thought was quite interesting because it's not what I necessarily expected, considering how they've run that line in the past. And it's kind of like a double nose tackle kind of situation almost. But yeah, I mean, any cool subs or any personnel quirks you guys have noticed?
Well, I'll just kind of comment on what you said with Slayton. I completely agree. On the surface, it's like, man, I would much rather have Wyatt out there. But I think there's 2 things that come into factor. One being that when I just got through finishing a 5-game saturation, the last 5 games of the season, I went back and watched the all 22 and really been studying what happened. TJ Slayton played pretty well. Now, PFF would, kind of suggest otherwise at times. But when I seen him,
fuck PFF, I hate those. Oh,
when I seen what it's funny, man, you never meet anybody that goes, it's okay. They either love it or they hate it. There's nothing in between. Right. But,
I've went both sides. At first I loved them. And then after seeing some of the grades that they would put out after certain performances, it's like, no, I'm done with them. Forget this shit.
But with Slayton, I feel like he really turned it up there in that stretch when the defense got better those last five games of the season. And the other thing too is, the majority of the teams run 11 personnel now, right? They're in 3 wide receiver sets, which triggers our nickel defense, which is our nickel 2-4-5. Well, even though they're in 11 personnel, they're still going to run on first down. So if you put Wyatt out there, I'm not suggesting he can't play nose. We know Kenny can, but if you put Slayton in there, that traditional nose, into that, anywhere from a 1 to a 3 tech, right, to kind of shade that center, that's going to help you with run defense, a little bit more than someone like Wyatt, which I think we would all agree is definitely a better pass rusher than he is a run defender. Although I think he's pretty solid run defense too. What it really tells me though, man, when it comes down to it, Nick, I'm feeling a lot better about this defensive line now that Wyatt's going to get more reps. I'm a big Wyatt fan. I think he's going to break out this year.
Me too. Yeah. I like when he was drafted. He was kind of like my crush. I wanted them to draft in the first round.
Same. Yeah.
I didn't think they would because of the age, blah 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 thresholds and the attitude stuff. But yeah, when they drafted him, I was so stoked, and especially with that second pick, I was just like yes. And I think it also kind of ties into this thing, which I'm still not sure how willing they are to do this, but the idea of moving Kenny off the nose because he is a bit of a smaller defensive tackle. Not that he's a small guy by any stretch, but I think his agility and his kind of quickness really lends itself to playing a bit more in the end, kind of that 3 or even 5 tech role. And Slayton obviously is a big dude, so I think he can definitely find more time comfortably in the middle there, which makes me really excited because having 3 out there with Slayton at the nose and not Kenny, I think would be just so interesting just to see how that turns out. And because I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And they like to play that gap and a half, on defense. And what I've seen with Kenny in that last 5 games, Joe, what really stood out to me is they moved him around a lot, and they didn't show the same front. I watched the openers. I think it was for the Rams game and the Vikings game, and it was a pretty heavy saturation. You had like a 6-game drive on the opener. You had a 6-play drive, and then an 11-play drive, and they didn't show the same defensive front one time. I mean, you had everything from a 9-4 I-3 to a 5 to the on the very next play they would have a 7 to a 5 to a 1 shade. I mean, it was very, very mixed up. Then they were mugging Quay Walker in the B gap as well with a little 4-eye look. So I think you're going to see Kenny bounce around a lot. I really do. And I completely agree. I don't want him just eating 2 gaps on the nose. I want him out there trying to isolate a little bit and really get some pressure in the running game. Do some of those run stunts that Carolina did a couple years ago. That stuff really worked because we're giving up 6 yards of carry on first down. It ain't gonna cut it, man. And I'm the Joe Barry defender too. So if I'm out here saying that, I can only imagine what the Joe Barry haters are saying. So
well, I was just thinking about the Joe Barry thing. The thing is his scheme is amazing. And we have the players on the Packers defense to make the scheme go. It doesn't seem like he can adjust when things start happening in game. So, that's why I was kind of miffed that they didn't keep Jerry Gray. I understand it a little bit because Jerry Gray kind of went rogue and was like, well, forget what Joe Barry's saying. Just go out and do what the hell you want to do and get it done. But back to Nick's thing about, the things that we were seeing with the talk of camp. One, Keyshawn Nixon made an appearance with the wide receivers during today's practice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. The way they've been bouncing around the offensive line, Tom's been seeing some time at right tackle. Nyman's been seeing some time at right tackle. Ryan has been seeing time all over the place. Knock on wood, hopefully he can get over that steroid suspension and actually live up, and maybe he'll turn into the 3rd round person that we were hoping for. But
hope so.
Yeah. Somebody's got to break the curse, man. They've got to.
Somebody does. Yeah. DeGuara has been the only one that hasn't been like a complete failure.
Right.
He hasn't been great, but he hasn't been like this complete failure.
He's on the field, right?
And then Malik Heath. Malik Heath has really been stepping up as he's not my Jonathan Mingo. I would have loved to have Mingo on this team, but Malik Heath has really opened some people's eyes. And I know we've talked about this before. We talked about it in our wide receiver preview before the draft, and then we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I said all along with Malik Heath, if he would actually put the effort in, he probably could have been that 2nd round pick like Mingo was, but for whatever reason he wasn't. And then I kind of like what I heard out of Quay Walker talking about how he's not going to let the 2 ejections get to him, and he started to do meditation and stuff like that. So I've said all along that this year is going to be a complete unknown because we're so used to, with Aaron Rodgers, we're going to at least win 10 games.
That's it. Yeah.
A playoff. But now we don't know what's going to happen. But everything that I'm seeing is making me excited.
Yeah.
And I look forward to this season. I really do.
Yeah, I think with Quay, like again, that pick is not at all what I would have ever picked at that spot. But I mean, like the fact that he's here, I love him, and if he pans out, and like they obviously have plans for him, it changes the entire infrastructure of this defense. Like it's not just someone to replace Devondre. It's an entirely different ball game. He adds so much value as a pass rusher. He's so physical. His ability to like get behind the line and penetrate, and again, this the physicality physicality and like the raw athleticism that he has, it changes everything for this defense. So if he does, start to heat up, and he was at the end of last season, especially once Devondre is gone and he's taken the bulk of the snaps there. I mean, it's really, really, really exciting. And even if it wasn't the pick that I would have made, or if it's not the most valuable pick, it does, like, at the end of the day, it means a lot for this defense. And yeah, he changes everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he accepted the responsibility wearing that green dot and was thrown into the fire. I think he looks great in pass coverage. I think that the only flaw that I have for Quay Walker, and ironically, it's tied to missed tackles. The fact that he had so many tackles, but yet when I turn on the tape, I still see him missing tackles. Is like, if he puts it together, this dude is going to be a machine. Like, he is going to be a machine, and I think he will. I think he's got the right attitude. It broke my freaking heart watching him walk down that tunnel after he got ejected.
Yeah.
And there were so many people on Twitter just going at him, and I'm going, and someone said, look, he still doesn't get it. He's saying, why are they doing this to me? That's not what he's saying. You could tell he was disappointed in himself. He let his teammates down. I'm rooting for that dude so much, man. So much.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right, so I want to bring this up. We've got it on our notes, and normally I would let Nick provide the topics and stuff like that. But I have to bring this up because I can't believe how stone cold it's been. But the way the Packers have been working their releases the last week or so cold. It started with Jeff Cotton. They let him ride. Now, this is the story I heard. I've never had 100% confirmation on it, but I have had people tell me it's happened. They let Jeff Cotton ride the bike from Lambeau down to the practice field. Then they let him know he was released.
God,
then we get to just, what was it, yesterday, Jonathan Garvin's birthday. Within 2 or 3 hours of the Packers wishing him a happy birthday on Twitter, they release him too. It's like, wow, guys, this is like killer mentality. I couldn't believe it.
It's brutal, man. It is brutal. I'm telling you. Yeah, I didn't even hear the bike thing, man. And if it isn't true, we're not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story. We're running with it, man. We're running with it. Yeah, the whole birthday thing, I had one of my co-hosts, Jacob, tell me about it. And it's like, really? They did? And I went back and looked at the timeline. Oh, my God, they did. They wished him a happy birthday. And blow out the candles. Now you're cut. Get out of here. But I will say this about Jonathan Garvin. He didn't do himself any favors, missing OTAs. No. I think he missed OTAs last year, they said, too, if I remember right, which is crazy. I think it was Marcus Eversole on his podcast said that he missed time last year. When I heard that, I went, if that's true, that dude's been flirting with danger for a while, man. But yeah, you can't make the club in the tub, and you cannot miss OTAs if you're a bubble guy, man. It's just not smart, not good business.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And he was a fringe player, but he was a draft pick. He was a fringe player that would show up on the field occasionally, but never really seemed to put it together. He was always a project. But that's still stone cold, man.
It is, dude. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, so I'm happy to get into the all-time defensive 11 if you guys are.
I'm excited about this, man. I am. Yeah. I love this type of stuff.
Well, now here's a question for you. Since we had Brian, my buddy Brian Fonfera on last week, and he gave us his offensive ones. Do you have an all-time offense you could give us real quick?
Man. Right offhand, I am such a detailed person. My personality is choleric melancholy, all right, which means I have to be in control, but everybody needs to stop and get organized, right? So I don't think I could do it on the fly. But I will tell you this, man. When you talk about offense, the first thing that comes to mind for me is some of the old players. Your Don Hudsons, your Johnny Bloods, even a little Curly Lambeau in there in his prime, before he got too big for his britches, as we say down here. I'm sure y'all say it in Australia as well. But so, some of those names are a lot of fun. Your Mike Michalski's. I just love Cal Hubbard. A lot of people have never even heard of Cal Hubbard. Cal Hubbard was an offensive lineman for Curly Lambeau. And the dude is in the Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he's also in Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame as an umpire, which is just insane to me. I read that and I was like, when did he sleep? Like what?
Well, you want to know something funny? Is there's a high school like 2 or 3 hours south of me. I think it's like on the Minnesota, or not Minnesota, the Missouri Illinois border. Their football field is Cal Hubbard Field.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's awesome. Let me ask you guys this: since you posed the offense question, let me take over and host here a second. No, I'm just what quarterbacks kind of a sensitive thing for me. If you had to only pick one quarterback, right? One quarterback in Packers history, there's a lot of great names. 3 are at the top of the list. I think we would all agree. Who would be your starting quarterback? Because I go back and forth about it, man. If I want to be entertained, it would probably been Favre in his prime, right? If I'm wanting championships, I'm going Bart Starr. If it's to thread the needle on one pass with deadly accuracy, it's probably Aaron Rodgers. But who would you choose? You have to choose one. Who would it be?
Well, we kind of said the same thing in our episode last week that, you have your choice basically of out of the 3. Now, Nick and Brian went one way and I went the other. I went with Bart just with the way I had built my team up. He was going to, because of the leadership, this guy was running the offense himself. He was, obviously it was Lombardi's game plan, but it was up to Bart Starr to make all the adjustments, to do all the play calling and all that on his own. And then, like you said, he's got the championship breed with him. So that's who I went with. And like I said, the way I built my offense up, that's who I needed running my team.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah, in terms of who is the best, I find it hard to argue against Aaron Rodgers. But I think when thinking like in terms of who I would like love to have running the team as a whole, and if it was in their prime, it has to be Brett Favre. As much as all the stuff that's happened recently, he's a terrible person. There's no doubt about that. But as a football player, his ability to rally people, his infectious personality, just the pure energy that he brings, and his willingness to keep pushing even when the odds seem impossible. And not that Rodgers didn't do that, but it's different. Rodgers is more that kind of like, oh, you don't believe me, F you, I'm going to win anyway. Brett Favre is like, everyone, let's do this together. Let's, make, we're greater than the sum of our parts kind of situation. And I just find that like for the way I think about football, I just find that so much more like fulfilling a little bit. And I guess like, it is pretty fresh kind of seeing like the lasting effects of the way that Rodgers ran the offense there. But just like those years with Favre, I wasn't around for them, but from what I've seen and everything I know, it just seemed like so much fun.
It's he was the quarterback when I became a fan. I became a fan in 2003. I didn't have a favorite pro football team, and I won't bore you with the details, but that's how I became a fan. And I, kept hearing about this historic Lambeau Field and the history of the Green Bay Packers. And long story short, I watched a documentary, and 2 weeks later, I was watching them play the Bears at Lambeau, and I've been hooked ever since. But it was kind of Favre that pulled me into that. And everything you said, Nick, very well said. Strictly on the field, he was a lot of fun to watch, man. He was the most entertaining player I've ever seen. That's for sure.
Yeah. He was the kid. That's what they all called him.
Right.
He was the kid because that's all he did was he went out on the field and he played the game like a kid. I 100% agree with all that. And, like I said, it all depends on how you want to build your team.
Right.
If you want to go out there and have fun and, whatever, obviously you're going to take Favre. If you want to play serious, if you want to, do everything perfection, you're probably going to go Rodgers because let's face it, he's probably been the best quarterback ever.
Yeah.
Arguably he's top quarterback ever. Championship wise, you can go other, Tom Brady or whatever, but athletic wise, he's it. And then, like I said, if you want leadership and all that, you got to go with Bart. There's no doubt about it. So you can't, there's like we said in the episode, there's no wrong answer there.
Yeah,
it's not like we're taking Randy Wright, or the name just Mike Tomczak for the couple years that he was here. Or, it's not like we're picking Tim Couch or Vince Young or something.
Man, I'm a Kentucky fan, and let me tell you this quick story. This is funny. I was living in Knoxville. I had been a Packer fan not very long at all. And, of course, Tim Couch had then left Cleveland. I don't know if you guys remember, but the Packers signed Tim Couch one preseason.
Yep.
I got so excited. I was living with my older brother. He's more of a father figure to me than a brother, really. And I remember coming home from work that day. I'm like, man, we signed Tim Couch. This is the guy that's going to take over for Favre. This is going to be freaking awesome. We sat down and watched a preseason game. I'll never forget. I want to say it was Joe Theismann. I could be wrong. Somebody was calling a preseason game that was a pretty prominent name. And Couch dropped back for that first pass, and it was like a 7-yard out route, and he bounced it. And the announcer went, well, that was just pathetic. And my brother, the pop that got out of my brother, he loved it. He rubbed it in my face so hard, man. I've never been the same since with Couch. So there you go.
Yeah, but like I was on Reddit earlier today, and somebody was talking about it was they were talking about the quarterbacks that they tried to bring in as retreads. You know, you had Rick Meyer, you had Tim Couch, and I even remember when they brought in Akili Smith because it was the same. I think it was the same year or the year after they brought in Tim Couch.
Just went through all the top picks that year, right?
Yeah. So it's amazing all the quarterbacks in the Packers history that have been there but never had to start.
Right. That's true. It's true.
Yeah. And Clayton, who is your pick at quarterback?
Quarterback, I would have to go Aaron Rodgers. I know a lot of people have soured on him here of lately. Man, I was right in the Twitter streets last year, arguing with everybody too. But yeah, if people like to say, well, Tom Brady's the greatest, and listen, it comes down, in my opinion, it does come down to championships, right? And that stuff does matter. But I'm a firm believer if you take Aaron Rodgers and put him on those Patriots teams, and you take Brady and put him on the Packers teams, you're probably going to get a similar or a better result with Aaron Rodgers with the Patriots. That's just me. That turnover differential is absolutely huge. The way he protected the football over the years, that's going to be the key to Jordan Love. Is he going to be able to protect the football? And he doesn't have to do it at that level, right? And the surrounding cast is going to play a big role. But yeah, man, Nick, to answer your question, I got to go Aaron. I really do. And I love Bart. I think Bart is the best leader of the three.
Yeah.
I think Brett had the most guts and just that ability to play off script and do it in a fun, entertaining way. But if it came down to one game, one throw, game on the line, I can still see that ball flying through that Detroit air, man, on that Lions Hail Mary, and all the others too. I'd have to go Aaron. I really would.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right, so defensive 11. How are we going to tackle this? So I have chosen
do it the same way we did it last week and just go position.
Yeah, so we have a few differences here in our formations. I've gone with a 3-4.
Okay.
Still 4 DBs. What do you have, Joe?
Yeah, I went 3-4. Just a second, let me grab my doc. Yeah, I went 3-4, 4 linebackers, 4 DBs.
Yeah.
And I went 4-3, which is funny because I'm a big 3-4 fan, and I think I'm the only person that likes the 3-4. You guys went 3-4, I went 4-3, and I love that you guys are using digital documents, and I'm over here like a Neanderthal with a notepad. Right, that's just the way it's going to go. But
I had to, otherwise I would have lost my paper. You got to see the way my stuff is set up. I've got like draft notes over here, and this over there, so I would have lost my paper if I wouldn't have put it on the computer.
So I think we should start kind of at the heart of the defense and in the line. Let's start in the defensive line. Your Clayton, your 4 defensive linemen, and me and Joe's 3. I'll go first. I'm going to be excited. Before you say anything, I try to get a balance of different generations in here.
Yeah,
and
it's hard too, isn't it?
Yeah, because and also I just found in general with the defense there was just so many older players that I just really deserve to be on there more than more recent players. But yeah, my defensive line at nose tackle I have Gravedigger, and at defensive end I have KGB, and the other defensive end I have Willie Davis.
Nice.
I just think, yeah, like just trying to get like a little bit from the 2000s, a little bit from the 90s, and obviously Willie Davis in there. It's like I think you could. It's pretty impossible to leave Willie Davis off. And there's like three guys here who have a claim to like best Packers defender of all time. Anyway,
Yeah, but you just broke my heart, man.
Why?
You just said you couldn't keep Willie Davis off, but yet you keep Reggie White off.
No. I have Reggie at edge. At edge.
All right.
Oh, you put him at stand up. Okay.
Yeah. Not at instant. Not
I like it, man. Put that big fella out there on top of a tackle and just make him block one on one. I love it, man.
Same as you were saying, Clayton. It's like that image of him doing the hump on Larry Allen is just burned into my mind, and it's just like.
Yeah.
So don't worry. Reggie is 100% on there. You can't make the list without him. But that's my D line.
There's no way, because Reggie's my dude. I mean, everybody always said that, Favre was what got them as a Packer fan. No, Reggie was my guy. So obviously, mine's going to be easy for that. My right end is Reggie White. My left end is Willie Davis. And then I put Henry Jordan in as my nose tackle.
Nice.
The nose is kind of hard because there's been so many good ones over the years. You have Gravedigger and all that, but that Lombardi defensive line was pretty stout, and Henry Jordan, amazing players. So to have those three guys and I kind of waffled back and forth. I was like, I kind of want to put modern because you got Kenny Clark, who's probably been arguably our best defensive lineman for almost 10 years now, and he's still only 28. And so I was thinking about doing that, but then I agree you can't keep Willie Davis off there. So I just went with two Lombardi eras, and I went with my guy Reggie. So
no, absolutely fair. Absolutely fair.
You can't go wrong. There's enough players in Packers history. You can't go wrong. You really can't. And I like the KGB pick, man, because when I became a fan, he was still on the team, and that dude, man, he could rush the edge. The way he would bend and take the corner, it was unbelievable. All right, so my 4-3 front. I'm going to go defensive end Willie Davis. I'm going to go defensive tackle Reggie White, defensive tackle Henry Jordan, and then defensive end Lionel Aldridge. Okay, so obviously Willie Davis, Hall of Famer, 5-time All NFL, All Pro. Actually, a guy went back in history, and obviously sacks weren't a stat at the time, and he went back and tallied them, and they said that he had over 100 sacks, which would make him the all-time leader in Packers history, which is cool. Of course, Reggie White, 198 career sacks, 10-time All-Pro. Henry Jordan, all NFL team 5 different times, anchored that Lombardi defensive line. And then Lionel Aldridge, a lot of people don't know about him, but that guy, he started as a rookie for Lombardi in 1963, actually has 3 Super Bowls. I'm surprised that he hasn't made his way to the Hall of Fame yet, to be honest with you.
There's something about those Lombardi players that they just don't want to throw in there for some reason. I mean, look how long
it's already 500, right?
Yeah. But yeah, you can't go wrong with that line. I mean, when we were talking about what we were going to be doing for tonight, you asked me, what defense do you want me to do? It's like, brother, whatever you want to put in as your favorites, just, if you want to run a 4-2-5, run a 4-2-5 for all I care. But, you can't go wrong with that. That's pretty solid. And to kind of go back with Nick, you did an interesting thing where you said you put KGB as an in and you put Reggie as a stand-up. I think I would have rotated him. I think I would have put Reggie as the in, and because if it hadn't been for the injuries for KGB, he would have been on the first year of the Packers going to 3-4, and he would have been a stand-up end.
Yeah,
just like Aaron Campman, they tried that with Aaron Campman, but the injuries were too much for him, and he ended up retiring.
Another underrated player, man. Aaron Campman was awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely,
my dude.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find a way to get like these. You see my other edge here. I'm just trying to find a way to get all them on there because I feel like KGB is still in kind of like the modern discussions about Packers defense is a little bit underappreciated. I mean, the dude's like the all-time sack leader for the Packers officially. Still it's fantastic. But you're definitely right, Jai. I could have swapped them around. So my edges here, it's Reggie obviously and Clay. And I guess if I'm imagining this to be a real defense, it's kind of like Clay's like the edge slash outside linebacker kind of hybrid guy floating around, because we know that
Right,
he has the
yeah.
ability to do more. But yeah, I mean, as a representation of like the modern era, I just find it so difficult to not look past Clay.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and I kind of went the same way. I had Clay as my outside, but I really struggled looking for that one opposite him, because I was like, all right, who's going to team up with Clay? And there's so many of them out there, but I went with Tim Harris. And it
Yeah,
finally just
yeah,
came down to, all right, I want a guy from like the 80s, 90s, and it finally just came down to, all right, who played the most snaps or most games on outside linebacker, and it ended up being Tim Harris, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, because he put up some stellar stats too. I don't have him wrote down like Clayton has his stats for his guys wrote down. But,
You're such a
and
nerd,
I
dude.
well, and to be honest, I had prepared for last week's episode to be the complete thing where we were going to do offense and defense. So I had this all wrote up last week, and I can't remember all the stats because I had them prepared for that night, and we decided to break it up. So I don't remember any of it.
Got it. So should I tell my linebackers now? Is that right?
absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. So here's my three linebackers. In the middle, obviously, Ray Nitschke.
Mhm.
3 words is all you need. I ain't even going to mention the stats. I'm just going to say mean on Sunday. That dude is everything you expect a middle linebacker to be. Hall of Famer Dave Robinson at outside linebacker, probably the Sam backer on the strong side. And I've got a dog over here that is upset because of fireworks. I apologize if you hear that.
Good.
Dave
Yeah, he's
Robinson.
not doing anything bad over there. It's the dogs. I
I'm
promise.
telling
I see
this
him.
poor guy, and ironically, his name's Nitschke. That's pretty funny, right?
Oh
As
wow.
soon as I met, so Dave Robinson, 27 interceptions, and
Yeah.
that's just wild for a linebacker, especially when they played way fewer games back then. And my other outside linebacker, what we're going to call the will backer, this one might surprise you. I was going through, I'm like, I just can't find another linebacker, right? I was struggling, and I dug pretty deep. And I don't know if you guys remember, fullback Clark Hinkle actually played both sides of the ball. Hall of Famer.
Whoa.
Said he was one of the hardest hitting linebackers in the league. So I'm going to put Clark Hinkle on the weak side there at will.
Whoa.
So see, he kind of did what I did with Jim Taylor last week. We kind of
Yeah.
fudged it just so we could get it fit in there. No, I love it, and he's Hall of Famer, both Packer and NFL. The practice field outside, the one practice field outside the Hudson Center is Hinkle Field, so can't go wrong with it. If you can figure
Yeah.
a way to make it work, go for it. That's what I say.
Yeah.
You're damn lucky I don't have just Don Hudson everywhere, because he played all over the place.
He played safety. A lot of people don't know that.
He played safety. He was a kicker. Uh, he was a receiver, and he also did some running back. So
Yeah. Yeah. Joe.
so my inside backers, because I already did my edge guys. I was looking at Nick. Sorry, just a second here. I went with Nitschke. Obviously, you can't. The guy
Yeah.
put his head through a locker in a movie, and you just can't go wrong with that. And then my other one, because I wanted to go a little bit more modern, and I think he still is like the tackles leader, is Nick Barnett.
Yeah.
He's one of the first ones that I remember actually being. I used to watch the draft all the time, but I never knew who was going where and whatever when I was a kid. And I think Nick Barnett was like the first one that I really remember paying attention to being selected by the Packers. So, I kind of a personal thing there, but other than that, solid tackler. Really, his career was kind of cut short because of injuries, but he's still with his time there was great. And of course, he had the samurai uh, uh,
Yeah,
sack celebrations. So that's my dude.
love it,
Yeah.
love it.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, like as you guys have both said, like it's really impossible to not put Ray Nitschke on there. Kind of just the embodiment of everything Packers defense. And then yeah, like, my other spot, I really struggle with this because there's like Bill Forrester, obviously, and you mentioned Nick Barnett, of course. I ended up kind of going with like Fred Carr, which is like a bit of a kind of semi-random, but I just think in terms of like again, like I have a real soft spot for these kind of really physically gifted guys, and he really kind of represented a bit of a revolution with the position, kind of growing to a bit more of a kind of faster playing style. And I find it so hard to not get romantic watching those old clips of him playing, because it's like, especially that time 50 years ago. I mean, man, you put him in the modern NFL. I mean,
That's good stuff there.
Now I suppose we should do CBs, and we've probably got a lot of the same ones here.
yeah. Yeah, well, I've been very vocal about how much I love Charles Woodson, so he's absolutely my pick here to start the cornerback. I just think everything that he represents as a whole, as a player, the tenacity, the attitude, the leadership. I mean, yeah, he's probably my favorite all time Packers player. And then my second cornerback is Herb Adderley. Again, I find it's really difficult to look past him as well. It's just like, I think the beautiful thing about this organization is that you literally could have made an entire team from like Lombardi era Packers, and it would be like totally fine. I don't think anyone would have a problem with it, really. Which is just like, we're just so spoiled that that's the case, and it's not even just for nostalgia's sake. It's like, no, those guys were legitimately just that good. So it's like, yeah, it's just really funny, and it's just really, yeah. I found it a lot harder to decide defense than I did offense. So yeah, Woodson and Herb Adderley, cornerback for me.
Man, I hate to keep it boring here, but that's who I've got too, man. Herb Adderley
Yeah,
and Charles Woodson. I've got Herb Adderley, 5-time All-Pro, 3 Super Bowls, 5-time NFL champ. And then, of course, Charles Woodson, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl champ, all 2000s team. Man, Wood was so much fun to watch, so much fun. And you could have probably put him at safety if you wanted to and wanted to get creative.
Yes, yeah.
That's the two corners. You put those two guys guarding the boundary, there ain't nobody throwing the ball on you.
Well, this is where we're going to differ just a minute. I've got Woodson. There's no doubt about that. One of the greatest. And, for a guy who didn't even want to end up in Green Bay to become one of the greatest in Green Bay is kind of funny but I went different than Adderley. I went with a guy that was on that team, but I have kind of a personal grudge against Herb Adderley, but that's a whole nother story.
Wow.
You're not the only person. I'll just say that.
But I went with Willie Wood. Another Hall of Famer. I was just looking at his stats real quick because I saw you guys both went with Adderley, and I was like, well, I better come up with some stuff before I open my mouth on this. But 8-time Pro Bowler. He did some punt and kick returning also, but 48 interceptions. Let me look at the tackles. Well, of course, at that time they really didn't keep track of a lot of that stuff, but 6 fumbles, caused fumbles. You couldn't go wrong either way, but because of a little minor personal grudge against Herb Adderley, I had to go with Willie Wood.
No, yeah, fair enough. That's really interesting. All right, so to finish up here, the safety spot. Clayton, who do you have at safety?
So
I want to preference this that we probably all went completely opposite directions with this one.
Right.
We might have one that's the same, but I bet you we all went completely different on it.
I love it. Yeah, I actually went Willie Wood at safety.
Yeah.
All right. And 4-time All-Pro, 5-time NFL champ, 2-time Super Bowl champ. And then at the other safety position, I went with one of my favorite players, the founder of the Lambeau Leap, Mr. Leroy Butler. Just Willie Wood playing center field, and then have Leroy, cheating into the box, blitzing off the edge. That's how I would see it. Willie Wood and Leroy Butler.
That's the one that I figured we would all have would be Leroy.
Yeah.
Nick, I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll do mine.
Well, no, seeing as Yeah, I mean, I have the exact same, so I can't argue anything. I mean, all the reasons that Clayton said, I mean, Leroy, and what a legendary personality, even still to this day. And again, like this, I have such a soft spot for these guys who represent either some kind of pioneering of the position overall, which Leroy definitely had, and this franchise as well. I mean, he was just as important as Reggie. There's that famous quote that the Broncos game planned around Leroy, not around Reggie. Like that's, I mean, how much of a bigger prop can you get than that?
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Okay, so well, I figured we were all going to go completely different ways, but you guys kind of stuck with the same because this was wide open. This one, I figured Nick was going to throw a Nick Collins in there just because Nick's a
Nah.
little bit younger and that, so I figured he would go with somebody a little bit more modern. But I went way out there. Of course, I went with Leroy. Leroy's a great guy. We're actually trying to get Leroy to come on the show, and I'm working with a couple of one of the guys to get him on here, but haven't heard anything yet back from him. Um, but the other guy I went with was Bobby Dillon,
Damn,
and I
come
I think
on.
Bobby Dillon could have probably slotted at CB, but I went with safety because they just have him listed as defensive back, so I kind of cheated that way. Um, but just the interceptions, 52 career interceptions. He finally did get into the NFL Hall of Fame, so that's great. And that's what I say.
Yeah.
The Packers seem to have, or the NFL has some kind of grudge against the Packers, where these great players tend to wait forever before they can get in. But to have the two ball hawks and Leroy and Dylan in the back, and having guys like Willie Wood and Charles Woodson up front, press coverage, nobody's throwing on him. I don't care. You could throw Tom Brady out there. You could throw Aaron Rodgers out there. Nobody's throwing on this team.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby Dillon, here's a cool story. I'm sure you know he was actually legally blind in one eye.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I don't think I knew that one.
they had a famous quote too. They said that a ref, an official, asked him one day during a timeout, during the game, they said, Bobby, what are you going to do if you lose your other eye? And he literally said, I'm going to become an official. Yeah, dude. The dude had one eye and had how many interceptions, Joe?
He had 52 career interceptions.
It's crazy. He was blind in one of his eyes. If I was blind in an eye, I couldn't take the trash out, dude. That's just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's crazy.
You take my glasses away from me, and I can't do shit either. So, and see, and he played before sacks and all that were tallied, so you can't even look that up. I'm on Pro Football Reference, and there's like no tackles, no sacks, or anything like that. It just interceptions.
Yeah, definitely underrated. That's for sure.
That's a good call. So something I asked last week here, Clayton, is that so when it comes to the Packers, God, sorry, you're my son.
You look like an angel right now, dude. That's amazing.
It's very angelic. When it comes to the Packers, it's like I said this last week. The reason why I'm so passionate about the Packers is because they have like a team identity. They're not constantly in between, like coaching regimes, and they're not like between philosophies, etc. They have like core values that have extended through multiple decades at this point. And even though our current front office is still related to those that Ron Wolf front office from the 90s. And so what qualities do you think kind of define a Packers defense, and like what things do you think that the Packers kind of strive to keep going as a defense as a whole, as a philosophy?
It's tough. That's a great question. You've had all these different eras, right, of teams. Lombardi, his teams were built off that defense. They really were. The 90s, we always think of Brett Favre. We always think of Mike Holmgren, the great offensive mind, from the Bill Walsh tree. But in all honesty, it was that defense in the 90s that made that championship happen, right? So, if you're asking, okay, what are the qualities of a Packers defense? I think it kind of comes down to, just patching it together, I guess is the best way to say it. Another way, too, is, as teams are built, they're built different, right? And, the Super Bowl that we won in 2009, 2010, it was because we had a solid defense, yes, but let's be honest, it was kind of an offensive minded team. You don't immediately think of people on the defense. You typically think of a young Aaron Rodgers kind of coming to his own. You think of Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, all those players. So as we step into this new era with Matt LaFleur, I think we're going to kind of get away from the norm when it comes to defense. I think that, like Mike Wall said the other day, we had him on the pod, and he said, if this team's going to win, it's going to be with defense and running the football, controlling the clock, and it's going to come down to turnover differentials. So I'm hoping that they can somehow channel that, from that Dom Capers era, where that's the thing they did well. They forced turnovers. We got to get back to that. So I think that would probably be the answer, Nick. If you're trying to say, okay, what describes a Packers defense? For me, it's you got to create turnovers, right? That's what they did. That's what they did in 2009. We know Reggie literally throwing offensive linemen into quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. It's just got to get back to that brute force. For the longest time, it's like the defense felt like they're almost friendly. They're nice. They're kind of the second, And when you think of Lombardi's defense, Nitschke wasn't nice. Like, you know what I'm saying? Willie
Not
Davis,
on the field. Yeah. Nicest guy you ever wanted to meet off the field, but on the field, he would eat you alive.
and Willie Davis was one of the most intelligent human beings in the entire NFL. That dude had more degrees than a thermometer. That guy was so intelligent. And at the same time that you get them on the football field, that defense was snarling, man. They were nothing to be, playing with. And then you get into the 90s, it's the same thing. Gilbert Brown, you imagine Gilbert Brown running at you, Reggie White, like I said, just Mike Wall on the podcast was talking about hitting Reggie. And I was like, that's right. Because he was drafted in the supplemental draft in 99. He went up against Reggie in his first training camp. And I said, what was it like hitting Reggie? He said, Clayton, it was different. He said, it hurt. Like, it was like, that was when you hit Reggie, it was like, you can't move him. You just couldn't move him. So I think we need to kind of get back to that. And I think with the Van Ness pick, I think with Wyatt in the middle, I want to see Wyatt kind of develop a little bit of that nastiness. I think this defense has got to get mean, man. And hey, listen, I know it was a flaw last year, but Quay Walker's got that mean streak. Just ask the trainers. Ask the on the sideline.
Too soon.
He's out for blood, right? So I don't know if that answered your question, man. Just going back through memory lane, it's I want to see this defense get mean. I want that to be the identity of this team because, again, Brett Favre and those guys got a lot of the glory, but let's not kid ourselves. If we don't sign Reggie White, we probably don't win that Super Bowl in '96, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And, I think that's why I was not so upset with the way Jair was talking last year, because that brought back those memories of the trash talk, the hype. And I think it really would do this team a lot of good to go back to that. But I have a question for you guys. Am I the only one that came up with an all-time special teams for the Packers?
Oh, no. Oh, I've got mine. All 11 are Keyshawn Nixon. I just put Keyshawn Nixon in. No, I did not do that, but that's impressive, man.
I feel like I'd have a tough time on the spot differentiating kick and punt return. But I feel like kicker has to be Mason, and the returner surely is what's that from the 90s? What's his name? Desmond
Howard.
Howard. That's it. I was like, the first name that came to my head was Desmond Bishop. I'm like, that's a linebacker. Desmond Howard.
Well, I had Desmond as my returner, and of course I had Mason as my kicker. But then I went long snapper Rob Davis, and my punter was David Beverly. So
nice. Good stuff, man. That's
I said I was really thinking of like this whole one episode we were gonna do, like offense, defense, special teams. So I have it all wrote up here.
Yep.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah. As far as kicker, it's got to be Mason. Is Mason the greatest kicker in Green Bay history? I mean,
well, he's the all-time scoring leader.
Yeah, I mean,
and starts later as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be, right? Money Mason.
Well, non-quarterback start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, you could look at Longwell. You could probably look at I can never pronounce the guy's
Was
name.
it Chris?
Jan.
Was Chris Jackie the kicker when they won the Super Bowl in
Yeah,
'96?
yep.
Is that right?
In the 90s,
Okay.
him and Craig Hendricks. That was even before they started using punters as holders. That was when they were still using the backup quarterback.
Brett Favre holding that kick like this.
But Jan Stenerud.
I've
He
never
was the
heard that
one
name.
in what was it? He was in the 60s. I think he was the Lombardi era kicker.
Hey, how about Jerry Kramer kicking back in the day?
Yeah.
Seriously.
And then,
That's
like I
wild.
said, Don Hudson kicked.
Yeah.
Because there was one, I can't tell you the game, but I remember researching it at one point where Don Hudson scored like all the points for the team. He caught a touchdown. He recovered a 2-point or a safety, or he caused a safety, and then he was the kicker for the field goals and the extra points.
Yeah. Don Hudson was a monster, man. And I crack up when people say, well, he couldn't play today. The heck he couldn't. Dude, that dude, they said he was, and people act like, well, he wouldn't be so fast today. Having all the access to the training they have today, you
Yeah,
telling
no
me that Don
kidding.
Hudson wouldn't be even better? Come on.
He would have been better than a Jordy. That's for damn sure. I mean, that would be the closest you could have for somebody for the Packers. I mean, you would think Devontae, but Devontae was a pure route runner. I mean, he had speed, but I mean, he was the pure route runner. Whereas Hudson innovated the position.
Yep.
He ran the routes, but he was also quick. I could be wrong, but I want to say that he was called what was it? It was it Alabama Lightning or something like that?
Yeah, there was some kind of nickname. I'm gonna look it up. I remember reading.
But he had some where it was like something lightning, whether it was like white lightning or something.
The Alabama Antelope.
Yeah, there you go.
That's beautiful, man.
Just because he had
that ain't
speed.
country.
But yeah, I mean, we could. I keep telling Nick that one of these, maybe this next off season, we just need to do an all 53-man roster just for the Packers, because you could easily do it. I mean, it would be so hard to do because there's so many of them to fit on a 53-man roster.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, that would be a stacked roster. I mean, stacked. Yeah. You imagine that 35% snap rotation and have Clay Matthews coming off the bench to rush the quarterback. Come on, dude. It would be awesome.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I guess the last thing I just want to ask here before we fully finish up is who do you think that's on the current roster could potentially join this list?
Oh, that's a great question. All time. And I was thinking about this earlier, actually. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was downstairs, I was feeding the dogs before I came up, and I was like, do we have anybody on this roster on defense that we would say, man, yeah, he's probably going to be a surefire legend, And the one that comes to mind, and I'm not suggesting it's true, I'm just saying it's the first person that comes to mind is Rashawn Gary. He's kind of off to a good start, right? And I think that's where our problem lies with this team really competing for a Super Bowl, right? I mean, think about it. In 2009, you could name a handful of players. You're Nick Collins. If Nick Collins hadn't got injured, he'd be a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt in my mind. Clay Matthews, I think he's still the all-time sack leader, right, in Green Bay history, if I remember correct. I'm a big A.J. Hawk fan. I think A.J. was underrated personally. You had Charles Woodson, Hall of Famer, first ballot. Who is that guy for the Packers? Will it be Jair? Will he be a first ballot? I think right now, if I had to answer that question, Nick, as far as defense, it would be between Jair Alexander and Rashawn Gary. That would be my guess. Yeah. And Jair's got a pretty substantial lead. He's just one of those guys that I think if he continues at the pace he's going, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I think. No, sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just going to agree. I can't, for the defensive side, I can't. Maybe Kenny, but Kenny doesn't have the stats per se to really back it up. But he's got the solid play. whether he's going to be a Hall of Famer or not he would really have to crank out the stats the next however many years before that would happen. Jair, kind of the same way. He was supposed to be a ball hawk coming out of college, but we really haven't seen the interceptions land. But he's had the pass breakups and stuff like that. But defensive wise, I can't think of anybody. Offense, I can think of maybe Bakhtiari. You got to put him as maybe one of your top offensive linemen in Packer history.
Yeah,
I think, and last week Bakhtiari was the only active player that we had. Obviously, besides like Rogers, who's not on the team anymore. But yeah, Bakhtiari was the only active player on the team that we had on our all-time list last week.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bach's got a great chance to make the Hall of Fame. I really do. I mean, he's been a top 3 offensive tackle pretty much his entire career, once he started, once he became a starter. Yeah, man, that's other than that on offense too, it's pretty scarce, right? I mean, Aaron Jones has done some amazing things, but I feel like he's kind of been underutilized, so the numbers aren't going to be there, right?
Well, we had Jacob Westendorf on a couple episodes ago, and what was it he said that Jones is only like 3,000 yards away from the Jim Taylor mark. So I mean, really? I want to say that's what he said. I could be wrong. Nick, look it up. But
not on this computer. I think it'll explode if I do anything more.
But I want to say he's pretty close to the all-time. Well, I mean, relatively close to the all-time mark.
I'm looking it up right now. Let's see here.
Yeah,
yards. Yeah, he's third on the list. You've got Amon Green at 83.22. You've got Jim Taylor at 82.07. You got Aaron Jones at 52.84. Man, that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, so especially how little he's actually run.
Yeah, and I think his touchdowns are up there too. So theoretically, I mean, if let's just say Aaron Jones is on the team for the next 2 years, he could theoretically eclipse that mark.
Yeah, he's the all-time leader in Packers history. Oh no, he ain't. Tobin Rote is the only player who averaged more yards per carry at 5.3. Aaron Jones has 5.1. So Aaron Jones averaged more yards per carry than Amon Green, Jim Taylor, John Brockington, Tony Canadeo, Ryan Grant, Dorsey Levens, Clark Hinkle, Paul Hornung, on and on and on. And here's what's crazy. Like, I think we would all agree, if you look at Aaron Jones, you think, okay, what's his weakness? He does fumble a lot, right? It seems like he fumbles. He only has 13 fumbles. Amon Green had 34. Jim Taylor had 33. So it's like he actually protects the football pretty well.
Well, and I think the reason people think fumble is because he does it at the most inopportune
time. The worst possible times.
So true. It's so true. God love him, man. Yeah. And when it happens, I don't find myself angry at him. I'm just like, it's Aaron Jones. I can't get mad at Aaron Jones.
No, with the type of guy he is, there's no way you can stay mad at him. And I think that's why a lot of people can't even really go after him on Twitter, just because of the type of person he is. But what else we got, Nick?
Oh yeah, just to kind of finish up on my side is I feel like there's already multiple Packers Hall of Famers on the team currently, but in terms of like guys who I think would be in consideration for all time, I think you're totally right, Clayton, with Jair and Rashaan probably having the best chance. I think Jair is kind of like exactly the way that Bakhtiari was viewed when he got his first extension, in terms of how good he's been, how consistent he's been. Since his first season, Jair has been so electric, even purely just from his energy. And really, once he hit that third season, inarguably a top 3, if not top 1 cornerback in the league, next to Jalen Ramsey there. And he's just like, he is like so consistent. And like, honestly, if we were doing an all-time defensive 11 and we did it in nickel, I mean, Jair in the slot would be, pretty good pick.
Man, imagine that. Yeah.
If if Jair was playing, if Jair was a slot cornerback, if that was his role in the NFL today, I have no doubt that he would be the best in the NFL at it. I just think, you know, his quick twitch ability, just his instincts, his reflexes, and, you know, this is like, yeah, it's like, it's that kind of that raw, like, you know, that famous play with the Vikings where he made the wrong call and accidentally, you know, sacked the quarterback. Like, he wasn't supposed to do that. It's like small things like that, and it's like, oh man, I love Jair, man, and I'm sure we
that
all
guy
do.
has such a case of ADHD that he just cannot.
That's exactly right.
No, I love it. I mean, yeah. I
No,
love
it's
that.
great. I have nothing against him for it. It's amazing. You see it on the field where it just that ADHD kicks in, and then you get plays like that sack safety,
Like
and
the post game interview against the Dolphins, right?
The Dolphins.
but yeah, it's amazing, and I think you know I think you could compare him a bit to Darrelle Revis because you can throw him on an island and say that's your side,
Oh,
and that
absolutely good.
and that's why it kind of gets frustrating with Joe Barry because we know we can throw him over there and say that's your guy. I don't care where he goes, whether he goes over here, he plays out of the slot, he plays out of this. That's your guy, and you stop him. And we saw that with the Justin Jefferson in the second game against the Vikings last year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I do find it so funny. Even now, the Vikings fans like, no, he was, you know, he was double covered the whole game. He was triple covered the whole game. Like, the double cover doesn't mean anything when Jair is the one who's swatting the ball out of his hands and mugging him at the line. Like, the double coverage doesn't affect any of that stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's all I have here for today, guys. Unless there's anything you want to, Clayton, is there anything that you want to plug of your own work that you would like us to just share?
No, I mean, like I said, the podcast is Packers Total Access. We've been doing this now a little over a year and a half. Thought it would probably last a week. We're still here. They haven't run me off yet, so we're just having a blast talking ball. And I just want to say thank you guys for reaching out. I think it's hilarious that you caught me mid argument on Twitter, and now we got two new Packer bros, and I'm excited about chatting with you guys in the future, man. This has been a blast. Anytime we're talking history, I nerd out. So you guys are a blessing. You're well spoken, man. Love your format. You're real. You're authentic, and that's hard to find nowadays, man. I appreciate the invite.
Well, now I don't know if I want to quit talking.
Keep saying nice things.
But no, Clayton, it was great having you on. You know, I always have those weird instances where I can get people caught off guard enough just to say, "Hey,
That was
just come
hilarious,
talk."
man. I was like, "Yeah, why not? Yeah, this knucklehead, this guy already blocked me. Nobody else is talking. Yeah, sure, I'll come talk to you."
But and I mean, it's the perfect time of year to be doing it, and you know, everything's starting to kick off, and we're almost to the year point. At the first week of September will be our 1 year anniversary for this podcast. So,
Congratulations.
I mean, it's something else. And like you said, you know, we didn't think we were going to last. He wanted somebody to talk Packers with. It was like, okay, well, let's just do a podcast with it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Love it.
Awesome. Well, guys, as always, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Clayton at Packers_access, myself at NicholasGRGR, and Joe at Iowa_Joe86. The podcast at Outback_Packers. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, listen, of course, all the good stuff. Until next time, we'll see you later.
All right.